Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. The left has been losing a lot in the courts lately, and it's making them lose their minds and their manners. Former Obama Attorney General Eric Holder called a recent decision to block Biden officials from contacting social media companies, quote, stupid and potentially dangerous. The three liberal justices on the Supreme Court recently found themselves on the losing side of a free expression case. And the far-left Sonia Sotomayor even resorted to scare tactics in her dissent. Chief Justice John Roberts fired back in the student loan case, saying the fatalist language of the liberals about recent decisions could hurt the court's reputation. But for now, it seems the Supreme Court majority is closer to public opinion. In fact, a new Economist YouGov poll shows that a plurality of Black Americans approve of the decision to end affirmative action in college admissions. Here now with reaction is the author of the new book, Trial of the Century, Gregg Jarrett, and author of Get Trump, Alan Dershowitz. Two brilliant legal minds. Thank you very much for joining us. Professor Dershowitz, let's start with you. You see the reaction to the affirmative action case, student loan case, the free expression case, and now you have Supreme Court justices in their dissents attacking the court and each other. Chief Justice John Roberts last week said, look, we are accustomed to disagreement, but not disparagement. What say you?
Look, he's absolutely right. All three of these decisions are close cases. That I'm a liberal. I've been a liberal for 60 years. I happen to agree with all of these three cases. I have been arguing against using race in affirmative action since 1974. I have always preferred free expression and the First Amendment over any other laws, whether it be public accommodation laws or hate speech laws. So many civil libertarians, people who are left and right, support the decision in the Webb case. It's a close case. And many civil libertarians also support the decision that says that in a democracy, important decisions about spending fortunes of money should be made by the legislature, not by the unelected executive. So these are all close cases that many liberals agree with and many Democrats agree with. And it's extremists, both on the court and off the court, that are screaming and yelling that somehow this ends democracy in America. They're way, way, way overstating the issue. And I think we should continue to criticize the court in a respectful way when we disagree with this decision, but not to delegitimate one of the most important institutions in American history, the United States Supreme Court.
Gregg Jarrett, Professor Dershowitz talks about how even liberals and Democrats agree with the outcomes, particularly in the affirmative action case. It sounds like many African Americans do too. There's a big polling compendium in the Washington Post today or yesterday going through all the data. And in addition to a plurality of Black Americans saying they agree with the Supreme Court ending race as an affirmative criterion in college admissions, the Washington Post and the Schar Institute had done a poll showing pretty much the same thing. But I'm really struck by a different poll showing that Pew showed that 20% of African Americans say they've benefited from these types of programs, and 35% said that it actually put them at a disadvantage. So where's the argument?
Well, you would think elected representatives, Kellyanne, would pay attention to that, the sentiments of the American public. But on the left, they simply ignore it. The progressive movement that embraces every far-left idea and orthodoxy now dominates the Biden agenda. Bureaucrats in government, many Democrats who have a chokehold on the party, have embraced it zealously and, in fact, irrationally. They don't care that Americans disagree. You know, the woke warriors simply ignore that polling data you mentioned that shows their beliefs are not shared. They're so determined to force their liberal dogma down our throats that any malevolent end justifies the means, even if it requires violating cherished constitutional rights, as the professor pointed out, or contorting statutory law. And then they act terribly shocked when the Supreme Court reverses their lawless actions. At that point, they then launch into these vicious denunciations. They demonize Republicans and conservatives and the high court justices themselves. If you don't conform, you'll be attacked and canceled and punished. And you know, in a constitutional republic that's founded on democratic principles, the exclusive remedy is always at the ballot box. It'll change only if enough Americans get fed up and vote to toss the scoundrels out.
It's a good lesson in the co-equal separation of power branches of government. Professor Dershowitz, you're a Harvard guy, you're a Harvard law guy. What do you think is the net effect of their loss in this case, along with UNC's loss, on the student body, on the culture there, on its future?
Oh, I think it'll improve every aspect of Harvard University of North Carolina. Look, the goal has to be, as Martin Luther King said many years ago, when he said he had a dream, I was there when he said it, that someday his children will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That's where we want to be moving at Harvard, at the University of North Carolina. We want to make sure people should be proud of their race, their religion, their ethnicities, but race should never be on its own a factor. You can have poverty, you can have overcoming disability, all of that, but the color of a person's skin, the accident of race, should never be a factor. That's the liberal perspective. That's the constitutional perspective. That's the perspective that Justice Douglas, the perspective that I have been urging now for almost 50 years. And the lie that's being told is that this overrules 50 years like Roe versus Wade, which did overrule 50 years. This doesn't overrule anything. Right from the beginning, in the DeFunis case, in the Bakke case, they've always said this has to end. This has to come to an end. This is just a temporary fix. In the end, we need a colorblind society, a society where people are equal based on their race. It starts with the Declaration of Independence, and this case moves us closer to a colorblind society. So I cheer it and I applaud it as a liberal Democrat.
Well said. Check out Gregg's new book, everyone. Gregg and Alan, thank you.